Rachel always knew that finding love is not easy. There are ups and downs, but relationships can be filled with sweet moments of romance in between. Although breakups can be some of the toughest experiences to endure, death is always the hardest thing one can handle. But for Rachel, dealing with her breakup was even harder when her boyfriend Alistair died shortly after they split. It was one of the most difficult things she'd ever been through. So when she saw him 2 years after his death, walking on the street, a disturbing reality came crashing down on her. This is her story. To understand Rachel's tragic story, it's important to know where it all began. Rachel was just a young 18-year-old girl working at a local bar to make some extra money. But the reason that it was perfect was not because of the money, but because it's where she met 21-year-old Alistair, who was working as a chef at the same bar. The pair hit it off instantly, and their relationship developed just like any other teenage romance. All of a sudden, their young love took a turn for the worse. Alistair got involved in a fight, during which he broke his hand. Despite claiming that the brawl wasn't his fault, he lost his job. Without effective use of his hand, he was no use in the kitchen. To make ends meet, Alistair turned to Rachel to borrow money. As his loving girlfriend, Rachel lent him $1,000 to help her boyfriend get by. But instead of getting by, he said goodbye. After lending her boyfriend $1,000, the couple split up. After their breakup, Alistair paid back $300 of his debt to Rachel, but then he ghosted her. But that's not the only negative thing that was attached to Alistair's name. Speaking to Alistair's friends, Rachel discovered that he collectively owed them up to $2,200. Pieces of the puzzle were not fitting together, and Rachel was determined to get to the bottom of it. But after speaking to Alistair's friends, Rachel was even more concerned. His friends described how various items had started going missing from their house share. Rachel was faced with a very strange and mysterious situation. Her ex-boyfriend had gone silent after owing her money. He apparently owed his friends money too, and items in their home had started going missing. And that's when Rachel discovered where Alistair had gone. The initial story that circulated was that Alistair had gone to rehab in Queensland. Rachel found this incredibly odd, as she had never known him to be a drug user during their time dating. This discrepancy prompted Rachel to start digging into Alistair's past. Rachel was well on the way to discovering what had really happened to Alistair when she received a tragic message from Alistair's mother. The woman broke the news that Alistair had tragically died. Apparently, he had been murdered by a biker gang that he owed money to. Although Rachel hadn't spoken to Alistair in a while, she was shocked to find out about his death. 2 years later, she was very happy and had learned to appreciate all the good things that brought her joy. 2 years after Alistair's death, Rachel was visiting her hometown and decided to meet up with a friend at a local restaurant. While sitting there, catching up about recent happenings, Rachel remembered. Alistair's brother used to work at that very same restaurant. When the waiter next passed by their table, Rachel asked about Alistair's brother, saying, "I haven't seen him in ages, and I'd like to say hi." However, this casual query was met with a shocking response. Moments before asking the waiter about Alistair's brother, Rachel's mood was casual and jovial. This mood quickly changed to shock and panic when the restaurant employee answered her question by saying that he wasn't in that day, but his brother was. Putting two and two together, Rachel realized that this brother was, in fact, Alistair. Up until now, Rachel was under the impression that Alistair had passed away. In fact, she had spent a good part of the last 2 years getting over this loss. Now, she was absolutely shocked to find out that Alistair was not only alive, but working at the restaurant that she was at. Rachel thought that by going to the authorities, she'd be able to throw the law in Alistair's face and get her money back. So, off to the police she went, but was shocked by their response. By going to the police, Rachel thought that she would be able to approach Alistair with a legal hand. The police were completely unbothered by Rachel's story. In fact, they told her that it was her word against his, that she'd ever even given him any money. It was clear that they couldn't do anything about her situation. Once Rachel realized that the police had no interest in helping her, she decided to play the ball that was in her court and contacted the restaurant where she had discovered Alistair. After a few seconds of ringing, the call was answered, and Rachel found out something even more shocking. There was no one by the name of Alistair working at the restaurant. How had he managed to disappear again? By this point, Rachel was completely dumbfounded. If Alistair wasn't working at the restaurant, where was he? It was during this confusion that Rachel received a text message that made her blood boil. The message was from Alistair's mother, the same woman who had told Rachel the fabricated story about Alistair's death. The scolding message complained that Rachel's scene at the restaurant had gotten her very much alive, son fired. Rachel was fighting a losing battle and gave up on her lost money once again until a few years later. Rachel is a smart woman and realized that she was dealing with a lost cause. Alistair had not only robbed her of money, but he had also faked his own death to avoid paying her back. His crazy mother was on his side, and the police were uninterested in Rachel's case. Rachel decided to drop the matter, and then a few years later, she nearly had a heart attack. For the second time since Alistair's death, she ran into him at another local restaurant. Rachel had finally managed to let go of the year-long grudge that she held against her ex-boyfriend and move on with her life when she ran into him again. She describes how they made eye contact, and she could immediately tell that he recognized her. Unsure of how to handle the situation, Rachel took the casual approach, saying, "Long time no see." Alistair's response was equally as casual, saying, "Oh yeah, it has been a long time." But neither of them mentioned the elephant in the room until it was too late. Unfortunately, Rachel's interaction with Alistair was short-lived. Their casual exchange is as far as it went, and Rachel never got to ask him the questions that had been burning her for the past couple of years. Although she asked about the money, Alistair denied everything, and that's where it ended. The poor woman was left more confused than ever, and still doesn't fully understand the bizarre situation today. But at the end of the day, Rachel learned a very valuable lesson. Always ask for a death certificate, or rather, choose your boyfriends more wisely.